If you love your tea or your coffee, then this nugget of inspiration video is for you. So first of all, it's not all bad news. There are some really good things about tea and coffee. Primarily, it contains antioxidants, which, as you'll know, are really good for you. But that just needs to be balanced out by the fact that it does contain caffeine. Now, caffeine is a stimulant, and if you have it in small amounts or the appropriate amounts, it can work really well. The challenge is that too many people have too much caffeine on a regular basis, and you become tolerant to caffeine, and therefore you almost don't get the stimulating effects anymore. You basically require that caffeine to function at even the most basic level on a day-to-day basis. And then if you want the stimulating effects, you have to go higher and higher and higher, and you end up having crazy amounts of caffeine, which I have seen way too many times in my work before. So here's what you need to understand about caffeine. It actually stays in your system for a really long time. It's got what's called a very long half-life, so it breaks down slowly. If you have a tea or a coffee at 7 a.m. in the morning, at 7 p.m. at night, there will still be around a quarter of the caffeine in your system. And that lingering caffeine in the evening can compromise the quality of your sleep. It won't necessarily stop you from going to sleep. I know people, you might be watching this saying, you know what, I can have a coffee before bed and still go to sleep. And I know that some people are like that. But it doesn't mean that it's not affecting the quality of your sleep when you are actually asleep. And it's highly likely that it will. And then you can end up basically feeling not rested when you wake up in the morning. And again, you get into this almost dependency upon caffeine to kind of function and feel normal. So we just want to balance out the amount that we're having to make sure that we don't have too much of that caffeine hanging around during the evening. The other thing to be aware of is that caffeine can definitely make you feel anxious. Not everybody, but for some people, particularly with the craziness that's going on in the world at the moment, if you're feeling anxious and agitated, I highly recommend that you look at your caffeine intake and consider, is that something that you need to dial down? Because that may certainly help you. So how much caffeine is okay? There is no official guideline in this space apart from in pregnancy. So in pregnancy, we want to keep it below 200 milligrams a day. And I'll share below exactly what that looks like. But for the rest of us, it's basically keeping it on the lower side so that we basically don't develop tolerance to too higher levels. And then if you need a little bit more, you could have a little bit more and it'll work for you. But if your baseline is kind of like 6 shots of espresso a day, you have to have a heck of a lot more to get an extra boosting stimulation effect if you are feeling a little bit more tired and needing that. So my recommendation is to stick somewhere between about 1 and 3 shots of coffee a day. So if that's like an espresso style, if it's instant coffee, depending on how much you put in the cup, that's probably nearer 3-4 teaspoons of coffee. Again, depends on the brand, depends on the type. With tea, somewhere between 3, 4, 5 cups of tea a day. But again, if you're like me, I have my extra strength British style tea. So the amount that I have needs to be a little bit less than that. So that's somewhere around the baseline to aim for. But it is really important to understand that depending on how a coffee bean has been roasted and ground and how the brew process is and the different types of tea bags and how long you leave it in the water for, so on, all that kind of stuff, it does affect the caffeine content. So it can vary. So you might be going to a coffee shop where you're getting way more caffeine than the coffee shop next door where your friend goes. So that is something just to keep in mind. So keep your tolerance relatively low. A couple of things also to be aware of is that decaf coffee is not caffeine free. It does have obviously significantly less caffeine than normal coffee, but it's not completely caffeine free. So if you're super sensitive, in that evening time, that's probably not a great thing to be having. Green tea also contains a little bit of caffeine. So if you have that before bed, something to be mindful of. So timing is the next thing to think about. When should we be having this? There's some people that say, the cutoff is 12 or 1 o'clock or lunchtime. Really actually depends what time you get up and what time you go to bed as to how long that's going to be in your system for relative to when you sleep. So there's no exact cut-off time, but certainly I would say keep it to earlier on in the day and limit the volume so it reduces the impact on your sleep. So I tend to have my tea and coffee before breakfast and after breakfast, and then basically I cut that off for the rest of the day to allow my body the time to clear the caffeine. So hopefully that's helpful. As I said, I will share the caffeine content of different drinks with you so you can figure out how much you're having. Just a final suggestion. Don't go cold turkey on this. You'll get headaches and feel ghastly. If you are a person that is having 6 cups of tea or coffee a day and you want to get yourself off that and dial it down to a much lower level, then just wean yourself off slowly. Maybe just drop it down for a couple of days and then drop it down again for another couple of days. But there's no point going cold turkey because it just makes you feel dreadful. So good luck with that, and I look forward to seeing you for another nugget of inspiration soon.